And welcome back to another Warrior Creed live stream with me, the radical Majid Nawaz. And today, as is inevitable, we have to discuss the ISIS-style attack in Bondi Beach, Australia, and the various heroes who thwarted a much larger attack, Ahmed al-Ahmed, as well as others, some of whom died. We'll go through some of those heroes who attempted to disarm the ISIS terrorists, father and son duo, and provide you some analysis as to who has been backing ISIS all this time. You may be surprised to know the answer. And indeed, President Trump has weighed in on this in the past as well. But that's all to come up for the next hour on the Warrior Creed live stream. So stay with us as we begin the stream today on the horrific Bondi ISIS-style terrorist attack. And of course, our deepest condolences to all the victims in this attack, and to the Jewish community in Australia and around the world, and our utter, total, unconditional condemnation of all forms of terrorism, no matter who they are by or who they are against. All coming up here on the Warrior Creed live stream. Stay tuned.
You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge. Witness the strength. Street knowledge. Street knowledge.
Terrorize the jam like troops in Pakistan.
Street knowledge. Street knowledge. Quick service announcement brought to you in part by Warriors.
Damn, that shit was dope.
Right, and we're going to begin, as promised, by going through all the heroes, because we feel that this tragic incident, this horrific terrorist attack, perpetrated in the name of Islam, but nonetheless by an extremist, heretical organization known as ISIS that abuses and hijacks the name of Islam in aid of their Islamist ideology and jihadist violent methodology. They are indeed an organization known to many of us because of their history of such repulsive violence. But to lead with the heroes is important, because some of these heroes, of course, just by their mere presence, undermine the ideological narrative that ISIS uses to recruit people for their terror operations around the world. And of course, by now, most of you would have heard of at least one of these heroes, and that is the man who successfully disarmed one of the ISIS attackers, the father, in Bondi Beach, Australia. Though there are other heroes we're going to get, some of whom did not make it out, some of whom died in the process, Jewish heroes as well. Let's start with Ahmed al-Ahmed, because he's the best known one, having succeeded in disarming the terrorist. Here he is on your screens. That is Ahmed al-Ahmed, Bondi Beach hero, as he's being called. It turns out, contrary to initial mass disinformation campaigns, it turns out, no, he is not Lebanese. No, he is not Maronite, nor Druze, nor Christian. He is, in fact, a Syrian tobacconist, shopkeeper, known as Ahmed al-Ahmed, a Muslim. We now know this. Relatives of his, including his hijabi mother, his cousins, have been interviewed by 7 News. We'll go into all of that just in a moment. But we're going to show you, first of all, the clip of him disarming the terrorist, just so we understand exactly who it is we're speaking about here, and the heroic deed that he is being praised for. Many of you may have seen this clip, but it's still nevertheless worth watching again, because it is rather satisfying to see the terrorist skulk away like a coward as soon as he is manually disarmed by an unarmed civilian. And that was our immediate reaction to seeing this news. You can see there in our post online on the platform previously known as Twitter, it says, "Watch the terrorist skulk away like a coward as soon as he is manually disarmed and no longer has his weapon." Here is the video, which we'll just play for you, expanded onto your screen so you can see it clearly. And take a look at this heroic deed. You'll see the image of the terrorist father. Apparently, this was the father shooting at people, at which point Ahmed al-Ahmed appears from behind a car and interjects. So have a look at this.
Oh!
Oh non, gros. Oh mais son pote, il va se faire tirer dessus. Il est trop con, le mec qui a l'arme. Le mec est hyper courageux. Oh. Wesh. Oh l'enculé, il a pris une deuxième arme. En gros, il a récupéré l'arme du mec qui... Tu sais, il l'avait pris dans sa main, là. Mais il y en a un deuxième, là. Ils sont tous les deux sur le bridge. Oui, j'ai vu. Tu les vois, les deux? Ouais.
Now, there are a few things here to note that are important by way of observation. And the first is you saw there the terrorist was active, shooting unarmed innocent civilians. You saw the Syrian Muslim migrant to Australia, Ahmed Al-Ahmed, disarm him. And then you saw him put his weapon down after disarming the terrorist. And that's the first indication that the man is truly a hero. Some commentators online, upon watching those scenes unfold, began wondering why he didn't execute the terrorist immediately. Well, actually, he did. Ahmed Al-Ahmed did the right thing, not least because, as is on your screens now, that we'll just read our initial reaction there. We said, especially if he fired that thing as an unidentifiable adult male in theatre, he would have subjected himself to an automatic shoot-to-kill policy by police by mere protocol. He showed incredible presence of mind. But it's not just the fact that he would have put himself in danger if he fired that weapon. The second point to keep in mind is that the suspect is better taken in alive for the purposes of interrogation and evidence gathering. That in order to understand exactly who sent these men and who was behind funding them, training them, and planning this, what inevitably must be described as an operation. And so it becomes incredibly important for evidential and investigative purposes, if you can, to capture terrorists alive rather than succumb to anger, which is understandable in a moment like that, and execute them at point blank range. Indeed, you may, if you did execute them at point blank range, be suspected not only of being a terrorist yourself, having fired the gun, but even worse, of being somebody attempting to kill the evidence so that they cannot be interrogated, and so that you can cover up for who sent them and who funded them and who planned this attack. So it was incredibly brave of Ahmed Al-Ahmed to do what he did, but also he showed a great presence of mind by not executing the terrorist, but instead put his gun down and then put his hand up so that he could be identified. And it's not surprising, considering that subsequently Ahmed Al-Ahmed, the Syrian tobacconist, was then revealed to have been a police officer in Syria, because that level of presence of mind to be able to successfully disarm an active terrorist and then not shoot him out of fear or anger, but rather put the gun down, does betray a level of training to be able to not panic in a life-threatening situation like that. And we know the situation was life-threatening because subsequently Ahmed Al-Ahmed was shot multiple times and remains in hospital, as you're about to see. So it was, we cannot overstate the heroic deeds of Ahmed Al-Ahmed, what he managed to achieve on that day. And he did everything right. He would have been forgiven by the public, no doubt, and perhaps even most likely even by law enforcement, if he shot the terrorist dead there and then, because he could have argued that he wouldn't have known if the terrorist had a suicide belt on him and he needed to neutralize him as soon as possible, which is the rationale our police forces use when they adopt a shoot to kill policy. It's the rationale they used when they shot dead the innocent Brazilian migrant to the UK, Jean-Charles de Menezes, in the peak of the war and terror years in the UK at Stockwell Underground Station in London. The reason they shot him, and he had a rucksack on, is because they said we didn't know if there was a bomb in it. We needed to shoot him to kill immediately to neutralize any chances of him detonating a suicide pack. And so Ahmed al-Ahmed, being from Syria and a former policeman, very well knew of those dangers. Of course, Syria is no stranger to ISIS terrorism, having survived a horrific, brutal civil war that involved ISIS for many years. And of course, most of the infamous execution scenes by ISIS emerged from either Syria or Iraq next door. So Ahmed al-Ahmed, knowing all of this, could have panicked, could have become incredibly scared or indeed angry at ISIS for ruining his country, and could have executed the terrorists there and then, but he didn't. He did something that must be studied by other law enforcement and counterterrorism practitioners for years to come, and that is he showed an incredible presence of mind, and he didn't kill the suspect so that he could be taken in to be interrogated. Of course, subsequently, it turned out that one of the suspects was shot dead. But that wasn't Ahmed al-Ahmed's choice. He left the police with that choice to capture the terrorist alive, and therefore did the right thing. But of course, we've also said he would have put himself in danger by discharging the terrorist weapon, because police would not have known whether an unidentifiable Middle Eastern-looking male was one of the terrorists, considering the other two were also Middle Eastern-looking, and more to their identity, again, in a moment, as to exactly where they came from, because there's some breaking news on that today. But for the moment, we're still on Ahmed and Ahmed, and let's have a look at the 7 News Australia news reportage about this man, about the fact he was wounded in the midst of engaging in this heroic deed, and what his family have to say about him as well.
The gentleman who raced into the scene to disarm one of the gunmen, we're just learning some details about him because he has been shot. Now, we are confident in saying that that is him. One of his relatives has just spoken to one of our reporters. We've got an interview coming in. We understand that this gentleman's name is Ahmed al-Ahmed. He's a 43-year-old married father of 2. And he raced in to help. We understand apparently owns a fruit shop in Sutherland. No experience with guns. He was just walking past. We are told that he has 2 bullets in his arm, but they think he's going to be okay. And in the next hour, let's have a listen to the hero's relatives talking about his acts this evening at Bondi Beach.
Still, he's in the hospital, and we don't know exactly what's going inside. But they said the doctor, he's very okay. And next 2 hours, they let us to go in and see Ahmed, because he's still inside and he do the operation. But we hope he will be fine. He's a hero, 100%. He's a hero, because what we see on the social media, he's 100% hero.
To his shoulder?
Yeah, he have 2 shots, one in his arm here and one in his hand.
And have you been able to talk to him today?
No, because I come when I see what's happening. And I come here to see him, but they said he's not allowed to go inside because he have to make an operation, whatever. I'm still waiting to see him.
Well, there you go, some first-hand accounts. So
now let's make something very clear here, and that is we've all just witnessed news reports and live footage of the Syrian Ahmed al-Ahmed disarming an ISIS terrorist. Most of you regulars to Warrior Creed and Radical Media generally will be aware of our own history in combating extremism and terrorism. Of course, having founded Quilliam, the world's first counter-extremism organization, in 2008, and then for roughly 15 years at the helm of Quilliam, being a leading voice in condemning Islamist extremism and jihadist terrorism around the world. We are very familiar with what drives somebody like Ahmed al-Ahmed to wish to intervene in that situation. It's important to remember here that though the terrorists claimed to act in the name of a warped version of Islam that we call the Islamist ideology, which isn't the faith tradition of Islam, but rather a modern fascistic political ideology, the hero that stopped one of them also comes from a Muslim upbringing and faith tradition. And that is the best antidote to jihadist terrorism. It is to have Muslims such as Ahmed al-Ahmed at the forefront of stopping, physically stopping, and where necessary, fighting these terrorists. And of course, how poetic that Ahmed al-Ahmed was Syrian, because Syria is the one country that managed in the end to stop ISIS and indeed overthrow the Syrian regime of al-Assad and replace them with a government and a system that is now being recognized around the world. Syria, the Syrian people, whatever you think of the new Syrian regime, but the Syrian people managed to put a stop to ISIS and undermine their potential for recruiting in Syria. Of course, they do still remain active, as we're about to see in this very stream. They do still remain active in Syria and other countries around the world. But it was incredibly poetic for the man that stopped these ISIS attackers in Bondi Beach to be Syrian himself. That's something that would resonate with his country, with everybody in Syria. They would be very proud that he stopped an ISIS attacker in Australia, just as they stopped ISIS in their tracks in Syria from forming their so-called Islamic State. Of course, that is in itself a misnomer. And so that's important. And it's important for our Jewish cousins to also be aware of that so that they don't feel intimidated by every single Muslim, because, of course, there are multiple times more Muslims around the world in terms of numbers than there are Jews. So it's understandable that our Jewish cousins would be scared and feel under siege if it were true that all Muslims think like ISIS or even a less extreme version of ISIS. But the fact is they don't, because there are Muslims, our brother, like Ahmed al-Ahmed, who are prepared, and this is the key point here, to take a bullet to protect Jewish lives. Ahmed al-Ahmed, the Syrian Muslim, took bullets to his body to protect Jewish lives on Bondi Beach. That is the truth of the matter. And that is what everybody needs to hear. And that is that Muslims are prepared and do regularly stand in between jihadist terrorists and their intended targets and victims, in this case, Jews. In other cases, they could be anybody else. They are usually unsung heroes because they're not so prominently placed in front of cameras while doing it, as was the case here. But it has been happening for a long time. It has been Muslims in Pakistan fighting terrorists that have been sent over the border by the Pakistani and Afghan Taliban. It has been Muslims in Iraq and Syria fighting ISIS, and so on and so forth. So yes, a lot of these terrorists, the vast majority of them, also come from Muslim backgrounds. They have a warped understanding of the faith of Islam, but usually it is the case that the ones in the front lines stopping them physically, but also ideologically and politically, are also Muslims, and they are usually the unsung heroes in this ideological war. In this case, Ahmed al-Ahmed managed to do it successfully and was filmed while doing it. And so he deserves the credit, but also we can take from that he merely symbolizes a wider battle that's going on around the world, which is an intra-Muslim battle between Muslims as to the future of their civilizational faith tradition. And that battle has been raging since at least the War on Terror, but before. And it's a battle that is ongoing. And we can report to you, having been intimately involved in that battle, that ideological battle, that ISIS is losing. Take that from us as an opinion of somewhat of an expert in the area of Islamist and jihadist terrorism. ISIS is losing that ideological, military and political battle. But suffice to say, in this case, we have a Syrian Arab Muslim who was prepared to take bullets and did take bullets to protect Jewish lives. That should provide some succor to our Jewish cousins, some relief, though of course not much relief, because they are of course being targeted in this attack, but it should provide some relief that not everybody hates them, and that indeed there are Muslims willing to stand with them and for them. That's important to say without detracting from the fact that the victims here, the primary victims here and the intended targets of these ISIS terrorists were the Jewish community of Australia. And it's important to note that so that we don't lose sight of the wider implications of this attack. While singing the praises of the heroes who intervened, it is still important to remember that our Jewish cousins feel under siege and they feel targeted, and they're going to be very scared all across the Western world right now in case something like this happens again. God forbid something like this happens again. But of course, they are understandably going to be scared. Now, for any of you watching who are Jewish and who have stuck with radical media from not only before the COVID years, but all the way through the Quilliam years, will know that we have been on this cause for many, many years now and are not about to give it up. We will continue challenging Islamist extremism and jihadist terrorism with all the means and any means at our disposal. We will continue rallying Muslims around a less extreme interpretation of their faith tradition so that they are able to stand between you and the terrorists, putting their lives and safety at risk in order to protect you. They will be on the front lines of this battle. And of course, all of you are welcome to join them as well. But allow us to reassure our Jewish cousins around the world that this mission, the challenging of extremism, Islamist and jihadist terrorism, and all forms of extremism, isn't about to stop, at least from our side. We will carry on and are carrying on and have been carrying on. And just because we're no longer on your mainstream corporate media platforms doesn't mean we're not continuing this work. Now, to continue with the stream, we want to go through some of the other heroes because it wasn't just Ahmed al-Ahmed. Indeed, there are others who deserve mentioning in this situation as well. But before we do, the Australian Prime Minister, Albanese, who of course one can be somewhat critical of as well. But still, he visited Ahmed al-Ahmed in hospital. We'll show you what he said. He said, Ahmed, you're an Australian hero. You put yourself at risk to save others, running towards danger on Bondi Beach and disarming a terrorist. In the worst of times, we see the best of Australians, and that's exactly what we saw on Sunday night. On behalf of every Australian, I say thank you. And here he is, Albanese, the Prime Minister of Australia, visiting the hero Ahmed al-Ahmed, the Syrian Arab Muslim hero Ahmed al-Ahmed, who took bullets for Jews, visiting him in hospital.
Very strong. Thank you very much. Your heart is strong. Thank you. Your courage is inspiring. Thank you very much. Very strong. Thank you very much. Your heart is strong. Thank you. Your courage is inspiring. Thank you very much.
Saying there, the Prime Minister of Australia saying, thank you, your courage is inspiring. Of course, that is true. Credit where credit is due. With everything else you could criticize the Australian Prime Minister for, and there is much, he's right there. That is, Ahmed al-Ahmed's courage was indeed inspiring. But let's go to somebody else now, somebody called Reuven Morrison. Now, the reason we want to talk a bit about Reuven Morrison is because if we go back to that footage of Ahmed al-Ahmed disarming the terrorists, watch out for the second guy, the second unarmed civilian who appears after the terrorist is disarmed and begins throwing stuff at him. Now, you'll see it in the video. Watch out for him because right towards the end of this video, you see him get shot and fall. And we're going to come to exactly who that brave man was right now. So we'll show you the video one more time. Watch out, not this time for Ahmed al-Ahmed, the disarmer. He's obvious. You see him grabbing the gun, pulling it off the terrorist, throwing it down on the floor, lifting his hand. That's the Syrian Arab Muslim, Ahmed al-Ahmed. But this other man is a Jewish man fighting side by side with his Syrian Arab Muslim brother to disarm a jihadist terrorist. It is, I as I say it, am feeling the word stick in my throat. Forgive me. But this is a kind of heroism that we need to see more of, because the man, the Jewish man who also sided with the Arab Syrian Muslim Ahmed al-Ahmad to stop the terrorist, sadly didn't survive. But watch the video and then we're going to show you exactly who he is, because his daughter was interviewed by CBS News. But you'll see a second man arrive here and start throwing things at the terrorist. Sadly, he didn't survive, but you're going to see all of that in the video. Here we go.
Oh non, gros! Oh, ouais, mais il y a son pote, il va se faire tirer dessus. Il est trop con, le mec qui a l'arme. Le mec est hyper courageux. Oh. Wesh. Oh l'enculé, il a pris une deuxième arme. En gros, il a récupéré l'arme du mec qui... Tu sais, il l'avait pris dans sa main, là. Mais il y en a un deuxième, là. Ils sont tous les deux sur le bridge. Oui, oui, j'ai vu, j'ai vu. Tu les vois, les deux? Ouais.
It was right at the end there. You saw it. They were both behind the tree. Ahmed al-Ahmad, after he had disarmed the terrorist, and another man. There was also a third man in a darker orange colored t-shirt. We're talking about the man with the white shirt. They were both behind the tree, and then he ran away. And as he ran away, he fell to the ground. That's when it appears that he was shot. Now, we know this because subsequently his daughter appeared on TV on CBS News on the 15th of December. We'll read the text of the CBS News' post for you and then just show you the video. But it's important to remember, honor this martyr, this Jewish martyr, stopping the terrorists, fighting them with no weapons other than his bare hands, and being slain in the process while protecting innocent lives of men, women, and children who are unarmed. His name, it's important to remember, was Reuven Morrison. As CBS News reports, Reuven Morrison was one of the people who was killed on Sydney's Bondi Beach during a mass shooting during a Hanukkah celebration on Sunday. His daughter, Shayna Gutnick, said that he died as a hero, throwing a brick at one of the shooters while trying to protect others. It is, if there was one way for him to go on this earth, she said, it would be fighting a terrorist. There was no other way he would be taken for us. He went down fighting, protecting the people he loved the most. She said her father, a 62-year-old Soviet-born member of the ultra-Orthodox Jewish community in Australia, had, quote, absolute immense and endless generosity. At least 15 people were killed and 40 people were injured when two suspects opened fire during a gathering of the Jewish community. We'll show you now the interview with his daughter. This is the daughter of the hero, the slain martyr, Reuven Morrison, who was killed while attempting to disrupt ISIS terrorists.
My dear father, Reuven Morrison, was shot dead for being Jewish at a Hanukkah event on Bondi Beach. He had jumped up the second the shooting started. He managed to throw bricks. He was screaming at the terrorist and protecting his community. He was shot dead. If there was one way for him to go on this earth, it would be fighting a terrorist. There was no other way he would be taken from us. He went down fighting, protecting the people he loved the most.
And is that in his character? That is something that he would have done, run into danger?
Yes. He's not one to lie down. He is one to run towards danger.
And when you saw that footage of your father, what did you think of him performing those acts of heroism?
That's him. That's my dad, as I called him, my tati. in Yiddish. That was him. Everyone that knew him knew the incredible man that was just too big for this world. The light that he added, his absolute immense and endless generosity, his sense of humor. He was just the most incredible person.
Who has failed you and your family and your father?
The Australian government, absolutely. They've had the warning signs for so long. The Jewish community has been begging and begging and begging for action, and we've fallen on deaf ears. Deaf ears.
And there we have it. Now, that was tragic. Of course, it's heartbreaking to watch the daughter speak in that way, having just lost her father. It's heartbreaking that he was able to throw a brick at the terrorist who had been disarmed, but then was shot by the other one, who, of course, was acting to protect his father, the terrorist. So all of this unfolded in a tragic way. Ahmed al-Ahmed did survive after disarming that terrorist, but the man who then threw a brick at him to further disrupt him succumbed to his injuries after being shot. That man is important to remember, Reuven Morrison. And he, as far as we're concerned, died a hero and a martyr, fighting side by side with his Arab, Muslim, Syrian colleague, both against ISIS. And there is more where such surprising acts of heroism came from. As the Telegraph reports, and this is on your screens now, we're going to enlarge it for you. The Telegraph of the UK reports that, in fact, another Middle Eastern refugee also attempted to disarm a terrorist and succeeded in kicking the gun away from the terrorist, but was then accidentally shot by the police. As you see here from the Telegraph, an asylum seeker intervened in the Bondi Beach terror attack, but was shot at by police and attacked by members of the public. We're going to play for you this video here. And that was reported by the Daily Mail. That's on your screens now, 15th of December, Bondi's second hero. And there is so much to say here. First of all, it's important to note that that second hero was also Middle Eastern. He was a refugee to Australia, married to an Australian, an asylum seeker. So here we have perhaps one of the most demonized categories or subcategories of people today, and that is asylum seekers and refugees from the Middle East coming to the West. He could have easily, and in fact was mistaken for being one of the terrorists, but in fact he helped to disarm the terrorist, kicked his weapon away from him, had his hands up, and he's sure in the video there he said, "Don't shoot," and he got shot by police. He fell to the ground, raised his hands again, and then members of the public came and stomped on him and stamped on his head, thinking he was one of the terrorists. Now, this example of the as of yet anonymous Middle Eastern asylum seeker, as well as the example of the deceased hero Reuven Morrison, who was shot dead while attempting to do the same, they both demonstrate something. And it is tragic, but they demonstrate just how brave what Ahmed al-Ahmed did was. Because as this second case of the Middle Eastern asylum seeker demonstrates, the police shot somebody that tried to disarm the terrorist because he looked like he was one of them. And of course, that could have happened to Ahmed al-Ahmed very easily. The second hero who kicked away the weapon hadn't discharged any gun and yet was still shot. Ahmed al-Ahmed, especially if he had discharged his weapon, would have been shot. But even though he didn't discharge his weapon, still stood a chance of being mistaken for one of the ISIS terrorists, Arab and Muslim as he was, and could have just as easily been shot dead by the police, who could have thought that he was one of them. And that points just to, and if then you look at Reuben Morrison, who was shot dead by the terrorist after successfully having disarmed him, and yet still was shot dead because the terrorist's son was nearby and was able to take revenge against him. It all points to how dangerous what Ahmed al-Ahmad did was, and how heroic what he did was, because he managed to do that in the face of such grave danger, was also shot, managed to survive. But it also points to another factor, which is, again, a picture that is emerging from this ISIS terrorist attack of people from all backgrounds, citizens, non-citizens, Muslims, Jews, standing and fighting together against the scourge that is terrorism. And often it is said to us, Majid, we wish you hadn't shut Quilliam down. We need Quilliam back. We need Muslims to be challenging extremism. And there's still so much to do. And all of that is true. It is. There is still so much to do. But also, this kind of example gives us hope and shows us that the fruits of our labor and the desire we had all those years ago to say Muslims and Jews and others can be at the forefront of challenging terrorism and extremism together, and that our enemy, our common enemy, isn't each other, but rather those that would shoot and kill innocent people like as if they're hunting in our streets. These sorts of stories and the heroism, as we just saw, demonstrates that that vision is truly alive and well. Muslims, Jews, Arabs, non-Arabs, citizens, non-citizens, refugees, asylum seekers, all standing together, risking their own lives, taking bullets to protect Australia's Jewish community. That's really, I think, one of the most inspiring parts of what's come out from this horrific tragedy. And we're going to move to another couple of heroes because they also deserve mentioning. It is tragic. This one is perhaps one of the saddest of all the examples we've given you, because the Middle Eastern unidentified asylum seeker appears as if he survived, even though he was shot by the police. We know Ahmed al-Ahmad survived. And yes, though Mr. Morrison, Reuben Morrison, tragically died, the Jewish hero, this one is even sadder than that, because it's the sad and tragic death of two heroes, a husband and wife, who also successfully disarmed the ISIS terrorist. It appears to be the same one that Ahmed al-Ahmad later on disarmed. They successfully disarmed him, but he still had a weapon on him. So once they took one gun away from him, it appears as if he still had a weapon on him, and then he succeeded in shooting them both dead. And before we show you this, we just want to say it is disturbing. It is perhaps triggering to some of you. You're going to see footage of an elderly husband and wife Jewish couple successfully disarm a terrorist and then see them lying arm in arm, dead on the floor, executed at point blank range. Please, if this is going to disturb you, turn away at this moment. All of this is incredibly difficult for me to present to you right now. As close as I am to this subject, it touches me personally. And of course, having been intimately involved in countering extremism and terrorism, when you see stories of heroism like this, it's truly and genuinely moving and inspirational. These are martyrs. They are heroes, and their names deserve to be remembered for years and years to come. Boris and Sophia German. We're going to show you them as the New York Post reports. We're going to show you exactly what happened to them. And we ask everybody to remember their names, just as you remember Ahmed al-Ahmad, and just as we hope you remember Reuben Morrison and the unidentified Middle Eastern asylum seeker. All of them heroes without exception, who stood in the way of terrorism to protect innocent lives, in this case, Jewish lives. As the New York Post reports, we'll blow this up on your screens for you now. Here they are, Boris and Sophia German. New York Post reports, 16th of December, heroic couple died in each other's arms after trying to disarm Bondi Beach terrorists. Devastating video shows. Now, here's a photo, first of all, before we get to the video, of exactly what's gone on here. The man on the floor in the black t-shirt and white trousers is the ISIS terrorist, the father, the same one that the hero Syrian Ahmed al-Ahmad later on disarmed. But perhaps, if not for the heroism of the husband and wife couple here, the husband on the floor in the purple t-shirt and the wife on her feet in this still with the blue shirt on. If they hadn't taken one of his weapons away, rendering him only left with his spare weapon, he would have had a spare weapon to shoot Ahmed al-Ahmed. But he no longer had that spare weapon because this hero couple, Boris and Sophia German, successfully took one of his guns away, which left him with only one remaining. And that's why Ahmed al-Ahmed was able to take that last one away from him without being shot, because these two had already been shot by him. It's terrible, it's sad, but also so meaningful. They saved so many lives. We're going to read from the New York Post article. Harrowing video shows an Australian couple heroically trying to take down one of the Bondi Beach terrorists before both were shot and left to die in each other's arms just weeks before the 35th wedding anniversary. Boris German, 69, and his 61-year-old wife, Sophia, tried to thwart one of the gunmen after they spotted the rifle-toting terrorist emerging from a car draped with a homemade ISIS flag before the deadly rampage began on Sunday, the Sydney Morning Herald reported. Here is the video. Now, this video was taken from dash cam footage of a passing car that didn't stop. So it's very brief, but it plays for you so you can see the struggle between the Germans and the terrorists. Have a look at this.
这个枪手，你看这枪手在这开枪，在这儿，在这边开枪，然后你看这个，他去扑倒他了，这样给他扑倒了，摔在地上了。他当时已经抢到枪了。
Now, they got the gun off him, but it appears he had another gun on him. And there is the sad, sad image, really, truly heartbreaking, of both the Germans dead on the floor, wife surrounding her husband in her arms, attempting to protect him, having been executed at point blank range by these terrorists. It is truly heartbreaking. It is something that we really feel heartbroken and horrible to see. This is the Germans on your screen. That is them. Died as heroes, died as martyrs, died as lovers, as husband and wife to the very end, till death parted them. But they remained loyal to each other as they tackled an ISIS terrorist. And really, we're showing you all of this not to distress any of you further. It's distressing enough as it is, even for me as I speak, attempting to keep myself composed as I am. But we're showing you this so that we can truly come to understand what's gone on here. And that is that ISIS terrorists attempted to divide us all. They attempted, and the purpose of these operations is very clear, is to divide and conquer. It's attempted to divide our communities so that we turn on each other, so that we blame each other, we begin hating on each other, and so that civil war between us ensues, so that wars abroad can continue, such as the wars in the Middle East. That's the purpose of these operations. It's so that we continue to press our politicians to continue pursuing those wars abroad, because we're so consumed by hate against Muslims in this case, that we want to continue fighting them. Remember, if you want to continue the Ukraine war and you want to continue being able to collect tax receipts to fund it, you need a level of anti-Russia sentiment, which explains the Russia hoax that surrounded and pursued Trump during his first term in office. Likewise, if you want to continue executing a war in the Middle East, you need some anti-Muslim sentiment so that the public is easily swayed to funding those wars. And these sorts of attacks, they are operations. ISIS, as we're going to come to itself, is funded clandestinely by rogue elements within the agencies, particularly the CIA. We'll come to that evidence in a moment. Stay with us if that shocked you somewhat. And the purpose of these operations is to divide us so that the public in Western countries continues to insist that their governments fight the Muslims abroad. That's why these operations are conducted. And yet this operation in Bondi Beach, by that metric, must be deemed a failure. Though, of course, ISIS will deem themselves as having succeeded in killing so many people. The actual strategic objectives, not the military target objectives, but the strategic objectives of the operation have been somewhat thwarted by the acts of these heroes. Because here we have, for once, an immediate narrative emerging in the instant aftermath of an attack that bucks the trend and upends the narrative that the terrorists and those globalists who back them want to spread after such a terrorist incident. The narrative they want is one of divide and conquer. But indeed, the narrative that emerges from this attack is one where Muslim, Arab, Syrians, Middle Eastern asylum seekers, Jewish martyrs and heroes all stood unarmed side by side, using their bare hands to fight ISIS terrorists. Out of all of those examples given, 3 died. The Jewish couple, the Jewish individual ultra-Orthodox who threw a brick at the terrorist, and of course the other 2 survived, Ahmed al-Ahmed and the unidentified Middle Eastern terrorist refugee. But all of them together, Arabs, Muslims, Jews, citizens, refugees, asylum seekers, non-citizens, standing side by side and unarmed as they were, in the case of the Germans, in the name of love, fighting hate with nothing but their bare hands, is the true and inspiring narrative that should emerge after this horrific ISIS terrorist attack. There's nothing we, as Quilliam, in the 15 years while we remained publicly operational at least, could have done better in terms of attempting to frame the narrative than what the deeds of these heroes have managed to achieve in this one instance. Because now the world over, people are going to know the name of the Arab Muslim Syrian Ahmed al-Ahmed, who took bullets to protect Jews, who allowed his body to be riddled by bullets to protect Jews. The world over should remember the Germans, a couple who died in each other's arms as lovers, as husband and wife, while using nothing but their bare hands to disarm an armed ISIS terrorist. That is how we should remember what happened after the incident. Of course, there is the cold analysis that remains to be done. We're going to get to it as to ISIS, where these fighters were trained, who's backing them. But we chose to lead with these stories so that we remain motivated to do the rest that needs to be done, which is undermine the ideology of ISIS, replace it with something more positive and inspirational, as opposed to something hate-filled and negative, and that gives us the motivation to carry on this work. It is stories such as these, of these heroes, that should motivate us to carry on and do the rest. With that in mind, we'll move to the terrorists themselves and where they were trained. And back on your screens, because as the Times reports, news has emerged that these terrorists appear to have gone to the Philippines for their training. And so you should see that right about now on your screens, reported by the Times newspaper of London today, headlined Bondi gunman motivated by ISIS, says the Prime Minister, subheading, both suspected attackers underwent military-style training last month in the southern Philippines, a hotspot for Islamist militants. That's from today's Times. The image on your screens now showing you the son of the father-son terrorist duo. That's his photo there. And we're just going to read from the Times article there so that we understand exactly what has happened. An ISIS flag was reported to have been found in a car in Bondi after the shooting, along with improvised explosive devices. It would appear that this was motivated by Islamic State ideology, Anthony Albanese, Australia's Prime Minister, told national broadcaster ABC. With the rise of ISIS more than a decade ago now, the world has been grappling with extremism and this hateful ideology, he said in a separate interview. Albanese said that Naveed Akram, an unemployed bricklayer, had come to the attention of Australia's domestic intelligence agency, ASIO, in 2019, but he was not considered an imminent threat at the time. None of this prevented Sajid Akram from being licensed to legally own 6 guns, some of which were used in the massacre. Naveed Akram regained consciousness on Tuesday after suffering critical injuries in the shooting, according to the Sydney Morning Herald. He remains under police guard in hospital. So one of the suspects from the 2 father and son ISIS duo has regained consciousness. He's in hospital under police guard. Of course, it becomes incredibly important that he survives so that he can be interrogated and we can get to the bottom of who funded and trained these 2 individuals and who met them in the Philippines. The reason that's so important, of course, is if you want to stop something, you have to go to their leadership, to their organizational structure, and make sure that you incapacitate their organization so that something like this can't happen again. And that means having terrorists survive so they can be interrogated. Again, from the Times, we'll just read you the quote, put it back up on your screen so you can see it too. There you go. Last month, both suspected attackers underwent military-style training in the southern Philippines. Authorities in Manila confirmed on Tuesday that they entered the country on November the 1st, with the southern province of Davao listed as their final destination. Now, here's an interesting fact in terms of their identity. Sajid Akram entered as an Indian national. Dana Sandoval, an immigration spokeswoman, said Sajid Akram, 50, Indian national, and Naveed Akram, 24, Australian national, arrived in the Philippines together last November the 1st, 2025, from Sydney, Australia. Both reported Davao as their final destination in the Philippines. They left the country on November the 28th, 2025, on a connecting flight from Davao to Manila, with Sydney as their final destination. Now, the interesting thing here is that contrary to initial media speculation, contrary to initial disinformation campaigns, the Times newspaper and others, which we're going to come to, the BBC and Bloomberg, are all now making it very clear that these terrorists, the father at least, was an Indian national, traveling on an Indian passport. A lot of speculation immediately after this incident was going in the direction of them being from Pakistan and blaming the Pakistani government for sending terrorists around the world. But it turns out the father, and therefore the son by birthright, but the father definitely, was traveling on an Indian passport and was therefore an Indian national. So if you hear anyone so soon after these attacks continuing to push out the line that these were Pakistani terrorists, you're now able to correct them. That particular piece of disinformation that was online deliberately being pushed, as were rumors that Ahmed al-Ahmad was not an Arab Syrian Muslim, but rather a Lebanese Maronite or Druze or Christian. The narrative being pushed out that the attackers were Pakistani nationals was also a deliberate online disinformation campaign, and it was done on purpose to serve the divide and conquer narrative. Those behind this operation wanted us to all turn on each other. And of course, it's easier to turn on each other when our dividing lines are identified. Pakistani Muslim versus Jewish non-Muslim in Australia. Of course, because India's majority are non-Muslim. So it would have been a lot easier for the divide and conquer narrative of those backing this ISIS operation if they were indeed Pakistani Muslim ISIS terrorists killing innocent Jews in Australia. It turns out that it wasn't as neat as that. These are Indian, well, the father was an Indian national, and of course, Muslim Arabs were on the side of the Jews, protecting them against this Indian national terrorist and his Australian-born son. Indeed, it wasn't just the Times that reported that. Here you see Bloomberg on your screens now reporting it from the 16th of December as well, issuing a correction because Bloomberg fell for the disinformation campaign. And you see there it says, correction. The Philippines says the father and son behind the Bondi attack in Sydney, one an Indian national, visited the country last month. That is a correction by Bloomberg after they themselves ran with the fake news that the attacker was a Pakistani national. Indeed, now here as well on your screens, the BBC reporting from the 14th of December, 2025. Police investigating Bondi gunman's trip to Philippines month before the shooting. And the BBC in that article states the following. You can see it there. Recap. Australia mourns as police investigate alleged gunman's trip to the Philippines. The subheading, the bullet points state, Australian police are investigating a trip taken to the Philippines by two alleged gunmen. The month before the 15 people were killed at Bondi Beach. Sajid Akram, 50, traveled to the country on an Indian passport, and his son, Naveed, 24, using an Australian passport. Border authorities in Manila tell the BBC. And so it is quite clear by now that the ISIS terrorists engaged in this particular incident were the father was an Indian national and the son was born in Australia to his Indian national father, though, of course, both of them being Muslims who joined the terrorist group ISIS. So it all complicates the picture, but what it does do is clarify that they do appear to have had international training backed by an ISIS supporting camp in the Philippines. Now, why that's is because of what we know about ISIS. And if we truly want to get to the bottom of this attack, we need to understand who's been backing ISIS and why. And this is where it gets really interesting. And that is that just days before this attack in Australia, we had another ISIS attack, but this time against American troops in Syria. And Syria is where they ended the war against ISIS and recognized the Syrian government and indeed lifted the sanctions from Ahmed al-Shara''s government in Syria. And so who would want to disrupt the peace process in Syria and the peace process between Israel and Gaza, and why? That's the question when looking at the operational command structure of ISIS we need to understand. Who would want to disrupt President Trump's peace efforts? That is why it matters that this ISIS attack happened a couple of days before in Syria. On your screens now, from the 13th of December, reported by the BBC, the headline says, 3 Americans killed by ISIS gunmen in Syria, US military says. You can see it there, and we're going to read from the article. 2 US soldiers and a US civilian interpreter have been killed in Syria in an ambush by an Islamic State gunman, the US Central Command, CENTCOM, has said. Officials said 3 other service members were injured in the attack, during which the gunman was engaged and killed. Syria State News said 2 Syrian service personnel were also injured. US President Donald Trump wrote on social media that it was an ISIS attack against the US and Syria and said there would be a very serious retaliation. Syria's president sent condolences to Trump after the attack. And here is President Trump. As reported by Rapid Response, POTUS addresses the ISIS attack on US forces in Syria. He says, "We mourn the loss of 3 great patriots in Syria. We pray for them and their parents and their loved ones. We will retaliate." And here is a video of President Trump saying exactly that. It's got loud noises in the background. Clearly, it's at some form of airport. But nevertheless, you can just about decipher what President Trump is saying. So we're going to play it for you.
The loss of 3 great patriots in Syria. You know how it happened. There was an ambush, terrible. We also have 3 wounded. They should be doing well. But we won the loss. These are 3 great people. And it's just a terrible thing. Syria, by the way, was fighting along with us. The new president of Syria is, as they told me, and I'm not surprised, he's devastated by what happened. This was an ISIS attack on us and Syria. And again, we mourn the loss and we pray for them and their parents and their loved ones. Very, very sad.
Mr. President, will the U.S. retaliate against ISIS?
Yeah, we will.
And should U.S. forces attack again?
You're going to be seeing.
And should the U.S. still be in?
We will retaliate. Thank you very much.
So you saw him there say this was an ISIS attack on us and Syria, and we will retaliate. That ISIS attack in Syria took the lives of 2 servicemen. And so the question becomes, why is ISIS attempting to disrupt the new Syrian government and the peace process in Syria? Likewise, why are they attempting to disrupt the Trump negotiated peace process between Israel and Gaza? because that was why the Bondi Beach attack targeted Jews, to disrupt the Israel-Gaza peace process. So now there's two peace processes that ISIS is seeking to disrupt. And so with that in mind, it becomes important to remember precisely who ISIS has been backed by historically, and exactly who they are, because of who they've been backed by, who they are attempting to come up against. And it's with all of that said that we're going to remind you now by showing you video of President Trump during his first term in office, in the election prior to his first election in office, making it very clear that he believes ISIS was funded by and backed by the Clinton-Obama CIA axis. And it's why we put it to you that ISIS is being reactivated and re-energized by that same globalist cabal to undermine President Trump's peace initiatives. Now, all of that might sound to some of you quite crazy, but we're going to show it to you so that you don't feel that it's that crazy. We're going to show you President Trump himself saying exactly that. So on your screens now, keep in mind, we said exactly this would happen. The divide and conquer games are there deliberately to prevent us from making peace with each other, so that perma war, the military-industrial complex's perma war, can continue, and globalists continue to profit from war, leading up to their march towards technocratic dystopia. That's why they want perma war, to have the pretext to continue clamping down on us with their technocracy, so that in the end they can rule with their technocratic one world government. And that's what this user here says on Twitter. He recognized what was going on. And he said, 3 years ago, you said two things will come after the global chaos post-2020, Islamist extremism and neo-Nazis. You were right. And yes, the purpose of that is to provoke civil war. And we're going to show you now precisely why they hate Trump so much, because Trump is the one that exposed that, and he's standing in their way, as was Julian Assange. Now, remember, the CIA and Pompeo are on record attempted to assassinate Julian Assange because he was exposing exactly who was backing ISIS. And that we reported in this article in Radical Media from the 26th of June, 2024, Julian Assange free after agreeing plea deal for telling the truth. And we've written here, most damning was Assange's true assertion that the CIA and their allies in Mossad had been behind facilitating the rise of ISIS in Syria. Here is the British newspaper, The Express, and it's on your screens now in big headlines. You can see it. We're going to maximize it for you. There it is. The CIA created ISIS, says Julian Assange, as WikiLeaks releases 500,000 US cables. By now, it's an open secret that the CIA and their allies in Mossad, these are, of course, rogue agencies, rogue elements within these agencies who've been doing this, have created and have been funding ISIS. So when you think of this ISIS attack in Australia and you are angry, as you have every right to be, remember, it was the CIA that funded them. And that's not only according to the British newspaper, the Daily Express, but also to the President of the United States himself. Before we get to the President, here's Julian Assange saying it. We're going to blow this up on your screens for you so you can see him saying it, and then we'll show you President Trump saying the same. Take a listen to this.
Early 2014 email from Hillary Clinton, so not so long after she left Secretary of State, to her campaign manager, John Podesta. That email, it states that ISIS, is funded by Saudi Arabia and Qatar, the governments of Saudi Arabia and Qatar. Now, this is I think this is the most significant email in the whole collection. And perhaps because Saudi and Qatari money is spread all over the place, including into many media institutions. All serious analysts know, even the US government has mentioned or agreed with that some Saudi figures have been supporting ISIS, funding ISIS. But the dodge has always been that's, it's just some rogue princes using their cut of the oil money to do whatever they like, but actually the government disapproves. But that email says that no, it is the governments of Saudi and the government and Qatar that have been funding ISIS. Under Hillary Clinton, and our Clinton emails reveal significant discussion about it, the largest ever arms deal in the world was made with Saudi Arabia, more than $80 billion. In fact, during her tenure as Secretary of State, total arms exports from the United States, in terms of the dollar value, doubled.
And of course, the consequence of that is that this notorious terrorist jihadist group called ISIL or ISIS is created largely with money from the very people who are giving money to the Clinton Foundation.
Yes. My analysis is that Trump would not be permitted to win. Why do I say that? Because he's had every establishment offside. Trump doesn't have one establishment, maybe with the exception of the evangelicals, if you can call them an establishment. But banks, intelligence, arms companies,
well, they all want him
beat foreign money, etc., is all united behind Hillary Clinton, and the media.
Now, you saw it there for yourselves. You heard it there for yourselves. That's Julian Assange saying very clearly that the Clinton people are involved in the funding and founding of ISIS. What we're going to show you now, he mentioned John Kerry by name. Here is a report of the leaked John Kerry audio where he says the White House wanted ISIS to rise in Syria. All of this will be put in our written version of this stream for you tomorrow. John Kerry, of course, was the former US Secretary of State. Globalist US Secretary of State. And here is the WikiLeaks recording itself. We'll put this in the written Radical Dispatch for you tomorrow. Leaked recording, it says, of John Kerry private meeting with anti-Assad Syrian representatives at the UN in September, removed by the CNN. And here is the original leaked audio. We will place that in tomorrow's Radical Dispatch for you as well, so you can listen to it for yourselves. We've also transcribed it for you. That's the former US Secretary of State saying that he wanted to back ISIS factions in Syria against Assad. And here, to make matters worse for you, is video of fighters in Ukraine, neo-Nazi fighters in Ukraine wearing ISIS arm patches. And we're showing you this to show you the connections between the CIA, Mossad, rogue elements funding, founding, and backing ISIS and neo-Nazis in Ukraine to further the military-industrial complex, to continue their perma-war so they can get their globalist technocracy. Here is a Ukrainian fighter wearing an ISIS armband. You saw that for yourselves. That's a video published by The Cradle. We will, again, contain that video in tomorrow's Radical Dispatch. But it's something that by now is no longer controversial. Here is President Trump himself in his first election run making the very argument that President Obama and Hillary Clinton founded and funded ISIS. He said it publicly in his campaign rallies. He wasn't hiding from this. And here he is. You can listen to it for yourselves.
ISIS is honoring President Obama. He is the founder of ISIS. He's the founder of ISIS, okay? He's the founder. He founded ISIS. And I would say the co-founder would be crooked Hillary Clinton.
You heard that for yourselves again. We'll just play that one more time because it is quite emphatic.
ISIS is honoring President Obama. He is the founder of ISIS. He's the founder of ISIS, okay? He's the founder. He founded ISIS. And I would say the co-founder would be crooked Hillary Clinton.
And I think it's important at this stage to reflect here for a moment to and say exactly what's going on. Before we do, you just heard there President Trump say that he believes that Obama and Hillary Clinton founded ISIS. Well, in that context, it isn't too left field for us to play you video of Obama, perhaps in a Freudian slip, claiming that he has confessed to training ISIL forces. Have a listen to this.
Forces, including volunteers from Sunni tribes in Anbar province. This month, we're speeding up training of ISIL forces, including volunteers from Sunni tribes in Anbar province.
And finally, we'll show you something that we said many years ago. This is from 2023, so 2 years ago, sorry. Israel helped to found and fund Hamas. The CIA provided funding, arms, and tactical support to ISIS in Syria. President Trump knows. Yours, Majid Nawaz, whistleblower, founder of the world's first counter-extremism organization, Quilliam, 2008 to 2020, with no closed brackets. Is the work continuing? Perhaps it is. We'll end on this note, just to let everybody know very clearly that if you are, and of course you are, angered by what's just happened in Bondi Beach, don't just focus on the individual two attackers. Focus on who trained them, funded them, who gave them operational support. That takes you back to the Philippines. Why is the Philippines relevant? What's the connection between the Philippines and the CIA? And then go back to Obama and Clinton and their funding networks and their role in founding and funding ISIS in Syria. And ask yourselves the question, why would the CIA and Mossad seek to disrupt President Trump's peace initiatives in Syria and in Israel? And the answer you'll find, as we've said many times on Warrior Creed and in Radical Media, is that they have become dominated by globalists who seek to further perma-war in order to provide pretexts for their technocratic tyranny and their surveillance state, so that in the end they can get their one world globalist government by using war as the excuse to clamp down, to use national security, to remove our liberties so that we are unable to complain about globalist technocracy. That's what's going on. That's why this attack happened in Australia. It's why the attack a few days before that happened in Syria. But of course, the secret's out, and the President of the United States is aware, as are we, and now, as are you. We ask you all to further what you've learned in this stream. Speak to people, send them the link, send them the written Radical Dispatch, which we'll publish tomorrow. And of course, as always, we thank you for your support. You've been listening to The Radical, Majid Nawaz. You can find the podcast version of this stream if you go to majidnawaz.substack.com. That's where Radical Media is homed. And for our premium subscribers, you'll get the podcast as well as all the paywalled content. We thank you for your support. We cannot do it without your support. Until next time, you've been listening to The Radical, Majid Nawaz.
You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge. Witness the strength. Street knowledge. Street knowledge.
Terrorize the jam like troops in Pakistan.
Street knowledge. Street knowledge. Quick service announcement brought to you in part by